Any excuse to speak about Blackberries, you know I'm going to take. I want to talk about this about as thin a rumor as you could get. A gentleman on Reddit or X, I believe, there was a post of somebody who had to sign an NDA because they had knowledge of a UK startup starting to raise money for a new BlackBerry phone. And yes, it feels like a rumor on top of a rumor. I would absolutely not trust it. I take it with a grain of salt, but we've talked about this with BlackBerry stuff before. Sometimes you're so thirsty and so desperate that when you see the oasis off in the distance that you get there and you realize it's a mirage, you drink the sand anyway. And I'm willing to, at this point, drink the sand when it comes to getting a new keyboard device in 2025. You know, the Unihertz devices were nice. They were coming out with one once a year. They weren't updated very well. The software wasn't quite there, but it was something. It was a decent keyboard. There was a tactile feel. It at least held me over until we maybe get to another BlackBerry at some point in the future. It looks like, at least it's in the news. There's rumblings again. There's at least talk of it. There hadn't been for quite a while. This is the most that we've heard since Onward Mobility went out of business. I do believe that that phone would have come to market. You know, others have held the actual prototype that Onward Mobility had. I think they were close. I think the money was there, just kind of dried up when the pandemic hit. So that's something there. So at least there's some hope. There is that company that bought up the BlackBerry patents on the keyboards and some of the stuff that they use. I believe some of them even expired as far as the keyboard's concerned. So there is some hope that there's something there. And I do believe there's still a market for people who want a keyboard phone in 2025. I don't believe that's out of the realm of possibility. I still email on my BlackBerry Passport. I kind of messed up because I changed one of my passwords, and now with the browser it doesn't authenticate properly, so I'm having issues with it. But the accounts that I didn't change my password on, I could type and pound away emails to my heart's content. You've seen the success, or at least they're in business. They're selling them. They made a second generation of the Michael Fisher's Clicks keyboards. In particular, I'm not a huge fan of them. I don't need my iPhone to be any taller. I don't need my Pixel to be any taller or my Galaxy to be any taller. Now, they don't put them on the large devices. It's not on your Pixel 9 Pro XL. It's not on your S25 Ultra. So at least they have some consciousness of that. I understand also that they did it right. You know, they put a kind of a more weight in the base, so it helps the weight of the phone. They put it in. He absolutely did it the right way. And I 100% support people who are coming out with products like this in 2025 because it's absolutely necessary. In fact, the Razer one, if it weren't for the fact that we're most likely getting a new Razer pretty soon, I would have picked up. I mean, I think it doesn't ship until May, the Razer case, the Clicks Razer case. But that looks interesting, right? That at least kind of makes more sense because you can have that 4-inch outer display plus the keyboard. You can play games on it. It's lit. You can type away emails and whatever and still use the entire 4-inch display and then flip it open when you need it. On the Razer, that makes complete sense and I like it. I also just like that there's purpose-built stuff coming back. Not every phone has to be for everybody. I love that we're getting a new Pebble Watch at the end of the year. I put my pre-order in because I like these purpose-built single-use things because you could do it well. You're not appealing to the lowest common denominator for all these products, which is what you get with these smartphones now. You can't do anything specialized. You can't do anything that reeks of uniqueness or individuality or some sort of something special because it'll turn some people off. And once these products get through however many board members and however many focus groups and however many chains of managers, you get washed down to nothing. Because everything that could come off as something that would turn even one customer off is immediately stripped from the product. And you're left with just these generic slabs of nothing. It's happened with Samsung, it's happened with Google, it's happened with Apple, with the iPhone. So it's just, I want something that is like this. Is everybody going to want a keyboard on their phone in 2025? No. But why can't there be a product for those that do? It doesn't make sense to me. It just really doesn't. So I like that there's a rumor out there. I hope it's true. And you know, keyboards are about more than just the typing experience. I love the fact when BlackBerry went to the capacitive keyboards, the fact that you could use this as a touch back and forth, so you're not touching the display or blocking the display with your fingers. You're kind of just using back and forth, as you know, on the Passport, the capacitive touch on the keyboard itself. You're using it basically like a trackpad. That's really nice. I love that feature when that came along. There's stuff like that, but there's also the shortcuts, the long presses. You could get around that. You can navigate around the system more easily. I think there's a lot of productivity applications to having a physical keyboard in 2025, and there are people that are going to want that. Like the Clicks devices, that's one of the selling points, I believe, that they speak about, where it's how you can have these different shortcuts in Android. And you're essentially getting, with all these combinations, with all the keys plus the combinations, you're getting over 100 and something commands that you could actually enter by the time you're all done. So that's something that has value. And even though I'll be the first to admit that I don't type as quickly on a physical keyboard that I do on the glass keyboards, I am considerably more accurate, and I don't think I'm alone there. It's just something about typing on the keyboard and hitting the physical key that you want that lends itself to accuracy, because I know my fingers, it's not going to read that my finger's on a Q when I'm going for a W when I'm physically pushing the W. So I just, for emails, for long typing, for texting back and forth, for productivity, there's so many reasons why a new BlackBerry would be a good idea. And I really hope, I understand that the slider makes the most sense. We've seen that before. I think the All-Around Mobility product was a slider, if I'm not mistaken, because it makes sense, right? You can keep the same aspect ratios that developers are used to. You can keep the same aspect ratio that keeps Android happy, but you could also have a keyboard. You could slide up and then have the physical keyboard underneath. So there doesn't have to be any software or anything going on in the background to make the apps look normal. I would also like a device that gives us more granular control over security and privacy on Android. Motorola does the best out of anybody. Moto Secure is fantastic software. You could go in and you can see what's accessing your calendar. You could go in and see what's accessing the microphone, other apps. You're like, wait, why is something looking at my calendar that shouldn't be? That's fantastic. So it is possible on Android. I know there's people that are going to push back and say, it's not possible. Security is not possible. Give it up. It's basically done. You're never going to be fully secure on Android. I understand that, okay? But if you're that level of whatever, then get one of those Fairphones where you can physically disconnect the power to the modem and go that way. But for the rest of us that are okay with just a little bit more control over our security and privacy, I think a company like something bearing the BlackBerry name would have a great opportunity to focus on business customers, focus on like the Motorola ThinkPhone, focus on the Moto Secure software, focus on some sort of suite and package of apps that allow us to control what's going on our phones. I think that's absolutely valuable in 2025. So if you put the package together, there's plenty there to kind of create some value. Don't knock people out at $1,000. Don't knock people out at $1,200, because I think you're just pricing yourself out of the market. You know, those Astra phones or whatever they are, the F whatever phones, they were like $900 for not great specs. That wasn't making any sense. There's absolutely a spot, especially with the rugged build, right? No glass on the back. Put the rubberized material on the back. Put eco leather on the back. Nobody's asking for crazy specs. For $600 or $700, you could get away with a phone that has pretty impressive specs for 2025, has the keyboard, nice capacitive panel back and forth that you could put, decent display, excellent battery life, decent software, and you can't tell me that there's not going to be a market for that phone. So while, again, do I trust this leak? No. It could have been anybody basically posting on X saying like, oh, I signed on Reddit. Oh, I signed an NDA. I'm working with this company that whatever. But the possibility's out there. I do think even if the BlackBerry name doesn't have the legacy appeal it once did, I think if you framed it less on nostalgia and more on the current use case for the phone, I think even without the BlackBerry name, you'd have enough that you could build a case that there's enough value there for $600 or $700. So take the nostalgia bit off of it. Take the BlackBerry name out of it. You can come up with a secure phone with a keyboard, with software that's developed for shortcuts, developed for the keyboard, developed to take full advantage of it, that has productivity software, that has all these things that you're going to want to do, that tailors itself towards that kind of business and productivity environment. And I think you can absolutely have a winner. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. But I'm tired of every phone trying to appeal to everybody. It's dumb. If you made it this far, like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Until next time, have that Steve-licious day.